Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to see this wonderful crowd here today. I am incredibly honored to welcome you to the inaugural India Center Distinguished Lecture with Dr. Vivek Lall. This event represents the spirit of collaboration, innovation, and shared vision of the India Center. Dr. Lall is here with us today speaking on the exciting topic of US-India technology opportunities. Together, we will explore a vision of the future, one where cooperation and growth between two of the world's leading technology hubs leads to meaningful progress. As we look to the future, we must also reflect on the past. We owe a great deal of gratitude to the India Center founding chairs for their commitment to fostering the growth of the India Center and making today's distinguished lecture possible. It is now my great privilege to welcome the Indian Community Endowed Assistant Professor and Director of the India Center, Dr. Yogesh Joshi. Dr. Joshi will introduce the moderator and speaker of today's distinguished lecture.
Thank you, Lala. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all, students, faculty, UCF leadership, and community members, to the inaugural distinguished lecture hosted by the India Center UCF. As director, I am especially proud to lead an institution that is an incubator of ideas, education, and research on contemporary India at UCF. Tonight's lecture on US-India technological opportunities comes at a pivotal moment when the global landscape is evolving at an unprecedented pace. We are gathered here to explore how the confluence of ideas, technological progress, and international collaboration between the world's strongest and its largest democracy can drive innovation, foster development, and solve the challenges of our times. I would like to begin by expressing my gratitude to Dean of College of Sciences at UCF, Dr. Maggie Coleman, for her constant encouragement, help, and support to the India Center. Even when UCF leadership is extremely busy with the Founders' Day, Dean Tomova has been a constant source of encouragement for the India Center. Presently, she is speaking at the Founders' Day, but I know many of you had an opportunity to meet her earlier at the luncheon. I am also very grateful to Professor Jayanta Kapat for moderating this event. He is Pegasus Professor in the Mechanical Engineering Department of the College of Engineering and Computer Sciences at UCF and the Director of the world-renowned Center for Advanced Turbo Machinery and Energy Research, board known as CATER. Anyone who has interacted with Professor Kapat finds his passion for research and commitment to academia contagious. Professor Kapat is a strong supporter of the India Center. And here's my favorite thing about him. He's deeply interested in issues intersecting technology and policy. Professor Kapat has a Ph.D. in Mechanical Engineering from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and MS in Mechanical Engineering from Arizona State University, and a BTech in Mechanical Engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Calcutta. Professor Kapat, thank you so much. It is with immense pride that we welcome our distinguished guest, Dr. Vivek Lall. As the Chief Executive of General Atomics Global Corporation, Dr. Lall is constantly reshaping the aerospace and defense industries, while also setting new global benchmarks for innovation. He is, first and foremost, a leading STEM researcher. Dr. Lall earned a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering degree from Carleton University in Canada, a Master's of Aeronautical Engineering degree from our next door neighbors, the Emerald, and thank you for the leadership and the faculty to be here today. And finally, a PhD in Aerospace Engineering from Wichita State University in Kansas. He has authored scores of scholarly articles and served as the president of the Mathematical Association of America. Dr. Lall is also a highly accomplished industrial engineer, a corporate leader, and a business entrepreneur. He started his journey with Raytheon conducted research with NASA Ames Research Center, and held leadership positions in Boeing and Lockheed Martin before assuming his current role as Chief Executive at General Atomics. Dr. Lall currently serves in the Business Advisory Board of the Geneva-based World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies, the International Advisory Group of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Board of Directors of the U.S.-Japan Business Council, and the Global Board of Directors of the U.S.-India Business Council in Washington, D.C. Finally, Dr. Lall is very impactful and influential one in decision-making and policy circles in the U.S. and in multilateral and global forums, including NATO, Quad Group of countries, and United Nations. He is a member of the United States technical team to the NATO Science and Technology Organization and serves on the advisory board of the Quad Investors Network. Previously, he served as an advisor to the U.S. Cabinet Secretary, heading the Department of Transportation, co-chaired the U.S.-India Aviation Cooperation Program, and was a special advisor to the United Nations in broadband and associated cybersecurity issues. Thank you so much, Dr. Lall, for honoring us today by giving our first distinguished lecture. U.S. global leadership and India's rise as a major power are based on shared values, mutual strategic partnership, and also their joint initiatives and entrepreneurship of the global technological landscape. The theme of today's lecture is a testament to the dynamic energy and synergy between these two great nations. From aerospace to defense, to information technology, to renewable energy and healthcare, the potential for collaborative innovation is limitless. Dr. Lall's experience as an aerospace engineer, a corporate leader, and a high-impact policymaker with integral links to both the United States and India allows him to provide a unique perspective on the immense potential at the intersection of our two nations' technological ambitions. At the UCF India Center, we are forging a path to bigger breakthroughs that benefit our community and the larger world. We serve as an incubator for interdisciplinary ideas that transcend traditional boundaries. Our mission is to catalyze research and educational partnerships that not only deepen our understanding of India, but also foster meaningful connections with leading institutions and industries worldwide. As we navigate the challenges and opportunities of this digital era, UCF remains at the forefront of nurturing an environment where creative ideas flourish and transformative research takes root. We are committed to empowering the next generation of leaders, innovators, and problem solvers who will continue to shape our world. The India Center at UCF is proud to play a pivotal role in this mission by fostering academic excellence, promoting dialogue, and building bridges between the United States and India. Before we invite our distinguished guest in front, again, I would like to invite Laila Chako back to the lectern. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for helping set the stage for this distinguished lecture, Dr. Joshi. And we are very grateful for your leadership. Now it is time for our inaugural distinguished lecture. To guide us through this exceptional session and facilitate the dialogue, I warmly invite our moderator, Dr. J.M. Kappat, to take the lectern. Thank you, Dr. Kappat, for leading us in this important exchange of ideas and insights with our renowned guest.
Thank you. It is a special opportunity to hear from someone of the stature of Dr. Vivek Lall. No one in the audience, especially in the current times, needs to be reminded that scientific and engineering pursuits are often impacted by policy, local, national, and international. And in that regard, it is hard to imagine anyone who could have conveyed that message better than Dr. Lall. With this, it is a great honor, excitement, and anticipation with which I invite and welcome Dr. Lall to give the distinguished lecture.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joshi, for the very warm welcome to Orlando and UCF, and all of you indeed indeed. I've had several great meetings with deans and faculties already today, and it's great to see the huge turnout here. With everything that's been said, this is a huge crescendo, so I'll see if I can live up to expectations here. But U.S.-India relations and U.S.-India progress on various science and technology fields has really catalyzed over the last several years. And I think it's an opportune moment for all of us that care about the U.S.-India relationship and to really take the next step. And I think we're at an inflection point. Something you'll notice over the last several years of the U.S.-India relationship is, regardless of who is in Washington, D.C. or who is in New Delhi, that relationship is just accelerating at rapid pace, especially when you talk about science and technology. And so I have some prepared remarks that I think touch on the various aspects that I see are huge opportunities as many of the students and faculty and so forth look at India. Many of you are first generation Indians, many of you are second, but the community, whether in the US or India, are very eager to engage. And I think the India Center and this confluence of technology and policy is very apt, and I think under Dr. Joshi's leadership will continue to see great strides. So as we all know, India has made major progress in a number of advanced technology fields, and it continues to do that. It continues to broaden its technological base in order to remain a leader in the Indo-Pacific region against growing adversary influences. This includes the need to diversify and create additional scientific and technological institutions that attract global talent to further strengthen its indigenous capabilities in cutting-edge high technology and basic sciences. We talked about this at lunch today as how HR and getting the right talent, whether it's in the US or India, to be ready to take on the challenges of frugal innovation and so forth is so critical. And especially in areas where there are security classifications and clearances needed, to get the people prepared and ready to take on the work is so important. With India's demographics, of course, and industrial might complementing US technological entrepreneurism, the two nations form a very natural partnership. Given their shared values, this relationship enjoys strong bipartisan support in both countries, and there is great merit to expanding the partnership toward a knowledge-based economy and formal collaboration in high-tech areas of common interest is the call of the day. I would suggest moving forward 3 areas in which international collaboration has long proven successful, and I think can be foundational to the next several years. One is national defense, the other is energy, and the third, space. And I think these 3 fields in which the countries are already working together have great potential for strongly correlating economic prosperity in both countries, as well as you look at the international, political, economic, and conflict scenarios. It is imperative that both countries collaborate. And where will the mutual collaboration take us? They will take us to sectors like healthcare, education, information technology, climate change, and so forth, if we have the right building blocks from a technology perspective. So just focusing on national defense for a little bit, I think this has, as you all well know, emerged as a huge pillar of Indo-US strategic partnership. I was in India recently, and the Indo-PACOM commander, Admiral Kabar, was over there. And as you roll out the world map, India is so critical for bilateral security interests. In June of 2016, as you may remember, the US recognized India as a major defense partner. And that's within quotes. And what that means is to facilitate technology sharing to a level commensurate with that of top allies and partners of the United States. Commensurate with this designation, in 2018, India was elevated to Strategic Trade Authorization Tier 1, STA1 status, which allows India to receive license-free access to a wide range of military and dual-use technologies regulated by the U.S. Department of Commerce. So therefore, U.S. and India continue to enhance peacekeeping collaboration in the Indo-Pacific. Lots of military exercises continue to enhance the relationship. And as some of you know, there have been some very foundational agreements that both countries have made. One is the LMOA, which is the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement. That will happen in 2016, that allows the militaries to use each other's bases for repair and replenishment of supplies. Then there was COMCASA, which was the Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement that happened in 2018, that provides for interoperability as well as the sale of high-end technology from US to India. Then there was an agreement called BECA, Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement in 2020, for sharing high-end military technology, logistics, and geospatial maps between the two countries. So if you take all this together, the long-established ties and new forward-looking pacts establish the framework that's needed to push ahead with extensive collaboration on a number of high-tech defense activities that would be of mutual interest to both. I'll just briefly touch on intelligence sharing. So the technologies underpinning, and maybe many of the faculty and students are working on this, underpinning intelligence gathering, including innovative instrumentation to acquire data, the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to extract facts and trends from a myriad of data sources, and cybersecurity to protect the information gleaned. These are all areas with enormous spin-off potential and should be emphasized in any attempt to broaden each country's talent pool. Each field is ripe for collaboration, and government-sponsored tasks are clearly the place to start. AI/ML is a critical area of interest because of its key contribution towards the evolution of humanity, saving time, costs, and frankly opening new playgrounds outside of human physical capabilities, accelerating the time frame that countries will need to improve their education systems to prepare their citizens for the job market of the future. Cybersecurity is another good example. Both countries have been at the receiving end of cyber threats from state-sponsored and non-state actors. So the structural complementarities between the two economies, especially in the services sector, provides further motivation for two countries to cooperate in this sector. Modern military systems, of course, that's close to my heart because I've seen the defense trade go from 0 to 25 billion in a short amount of time. Full deployment, development and initial deployment of complex modern military systems has taken more than a decade. The U.S. has made investments needed to accomplish this for modern military ships, aircraft, and other equipment. Recognizing that it would be fiscally unwise for India to attempt to replicate the process, both these countries have established defense trade relationships which are endorsed by the U.S. government. And this has supported the total defense trade increase to 25 billion that I said. And so I think whether it is foreign military sales or direct commercial sales or activities, that has been on an upswing. Briefly like to touch on energy, which is a very important aspect. And the other side of the coin of defense security is energy security, as we have seen in some of the recent conflicts of how a conflict can severely impact energy issues. The quest for energy independence has animated both India and US policies. Both countries want to avoid the entanglements that come from over-reliance on countries with fundamentally different sets of values. India has had to meet the rapidly increasing energy demands of a growing population and an even more growing set of industrial demands, while the US is increasingly influenced by the need to address the adverse effects on the climate, on the burning of fossil fuels, India's own huge plans to realize energy sufficiency span the entire spectrum of sources, whether it's coal, nuclear, biofuels, renewables, and so forth. As you know, the country's total renewable energy capacity as of a few years ago stood nearly at 100,000 megawatts, a massive leap from 5,000 megawatts in 2004. India is currently the fourth biggest producer of wind energy in the world after China, US, and Germany. It is clearly in the best interest of both countries to help commercialize energy sources that meet these long-term needs. Accomplishing this jointly would be a further benefit, of course. So renewable energy and fusion fields are unconstrained and I'm talking about nuclear fusion, are unconstrained in technology transfer, while nuclear fission is governed by a number of treaty constraints. Fortunately, India and the US have developed a favored nation status through the approval of an Indo-US nuclear deal, as you remember, in 2005, and you must be reading the recent news of how that has been further relaxed between both countries. And now, participation by private companies in nuclear fission and fusion are possible. Speaking about fission, as most of the robust source of clean continuous power, nuclear fission has much to offer in addressing India's energy security needs in an environmentally acceptable manner. You must have read about the small modular reactors and all the innovation around that. The cost of a gigawatt scale power plants has grown much faster than inflation, making this approach less economically competitive than it had been a generation ago. These cost increases are largely attributable to increased regulatory requirements, which have added expensive non-revenue generating safety features and extended the time required for licensing and construction. Furthermore, the response of regulatory bodies in the aftermath of the Fukushima event makes it clear that this trend will continue. Shifting to smaller, low-power units is being studied as one way to improve the plant deployment schedule. Termed small modular reactors, or as we call it, advanced modular reactors, the notion is to reduce the physical scale to prevent factory fabrication, providing economies of production, and compacting the construction schedule. Such an approach would reduce the capital outlay required to build a power plant. But its effect on the life cycle generation cost of electricity still remains debatable due to the diseconomies of scale. The US brings technological innovation to this problem, supplementing that with the manufacturing expertise of India, which could be the way to move forward. It will be interesting to know that more than 99% of the nuclear power ever generated has come from light water reactors. And the question arises whether alternatives to water-cooled reactors can solve the economic problems cited and perhaps make headway on the nuclear waste issue that has plagued the nuclear industry since its inception. 3 advanced reactor designs have emerged as promising alternatives to LWRs. One is helium-cooled reactors, the second is molten salt reactors, and the third, of course, is the convert and burn fast neutron spectrum reactors. All 3 can materially increase the operational efficiency of nuclear plants, which is a major driver of the cost of electricity, while enabling near complete fuel utilization of this potent energy source. Coming briefly to fusion, both the countries envision magnetic fusion playing a key role in the world's long-term energy future. Both are active contributors to the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, ITER, and in case those of you are interested, I highly recommend a visit to the south of France. It is the world's most ambitious fusion endeavor. But the US, I would say, has a much more aggressive domestic research program, which is now focused on science. The US intends to shift this effort to one focused on technology, to prepare for demonstrating an energy-producing fusion device that will serve as a starting point for commercialization. It would be mutually advantageous for India to join in this demonstration now. The recommended starting point for this engagement is involvement in the current science-dominated research program. India did actively participate in the operations of the U.S. D3D facility, which is our national fusion facility, actually on our campus in San Diego. And that's been producing research for decades now. So collaboration is a win-win proposition in nuclear fusion, and I think that will play itself out. Finally, to touch on space. Of course, we all know the U.S. is a pioneer in space and implementing space technology. Building on the successes of the U.S. satellite program, moon exploration programs, India is now joining the ranks of world leaders in this area. There's a strong history of collaboration between NASA and ISRO, which is the Indian Space Research Organization, which forms a firm foundation for pursuing future collaboration. And I think the amount of tech content is going to go up. The most propitious paths for such collaboration are Earth monitoring and long-term manned missions. Earth monitoring efforts in support of data gathering for climate change are already underway in the form of the NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar satellite. Scheduled many more launches that you will be hearing of in the future. This device can track short-term and long-term changes in glaciers and soil moisture, as well as monitor flood conditions. As worldwide concern about global warming grows, there will be an increasing need for additional satellites to quantify a host of effects on the Earth's surfaces. India and the US form an especially strong team to take the lead in this area because of expertise in launch and instrumentation technology. Developing space-qualified instruments has been a boon to US universities and has helped energize young scientists and engineers around the future of space innovation. This same pattern can be expected in India, and you've probably heard of some of the startups in the space industry. Of course, India has aggressive plans for manned spaceflight and will soon join the exclusive club of nations in this objective. The U.S. plans for future deep space explorations are still taking shape under the Artemis program and mission to establish the first long-term presence on the moon in preparation for the next giant leap. Incidentally, if you want astronauts on the moon for any significant amount of time, then fission reactors will be necessary. In the case of Mars voyage, the flight time needs to be shorter, much shorter. And you must have seen some of the recent research, in fact, that we have done in General Atomics, where we can take the flight time from here to Mars from 6 months to 45 days with the nuclear fuels that are. So there is an environment for requisite nuclear technologies for space missions at an early stage. Active collaboration with India would spur the pace of development. So I think between space, nuclear, and of course the ongoing defense, not only trade, but co-production, co-design, there's just a lot of opportunities for STEM-based universities and institutions to engage. I think the investment in R&D is only one aspect of an effective portfolio of policies to foster innovation, spanning regulatory taxation as well as fiscal allocations. I was joking earlier that successful companies are run by engineers and not by finance folks. There was a finance professor in the room. So, with due respect to finance, so we have to strengthen all these areas in technology, and I think STEM-related research is so critical, which I am very fortunate to see that UCF is focusing on. So, to conclude, no one country has the best lot of ideas. Every country it's got its own strengths and doing the best they can with the resources they have. But if the next next generation of scholars and experts are to save the globe, so to speak, and not just one country, then collaboration is essential. And I feel India and US are perfectly positioned to lead the way in this. Thank you.
You mentioned about national defense and space being the three areas where there will be potential. A lot of collaborations are starting. The one that is closest to my heart is energy. So, as you mentioned, there was recently this nuclear deal happened. All the companies on the Indian side and the big companies, present to grow around. However, on the US side, the three new technologies that you mentioned, these are also all startups, like synergy, power, and high power. Do you think similar startups can happen in India to bring those technologies out? These are newer technologies. Because India now has a hybrid startups that are coming up.
Absolutely. I do think this will go. Thank you.
I do think, depending on how hard the question is, may have been better off. But this is something I think the answer is yes. And we think that there are startups in energy, both nuclear fusion, nuclear fission, that will come up in India. In fact, there are some that I'm reading about already, like chemical fusion, granules, etc., that are coming up into different aspects of fusion. I think in fission as well. Again, bringing the finance professor back into this, I think it's going to require a lot of resources. And so the question for startups always is, how much can they sustain without mentoring to it? Whether the mentor is the government or the large company, for it to be sustained. But I do think that from the knowledge standpoint, I do think there are some good responding.
Of course, companies like Power have been benefited by Bill Gates Foundation, the VC money, that is also necessary for startups.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'll go with one more question in the same area. Fusion, and let's call the 50-year array technology. And now we see a lot of startups are coming up, CFS, TAE, etc. What is your take on the actual implementation of fusion? And I'm more interested also in the power side of the fusion, the how to convert the reactors to the grid.
I think the second piece of the question, the power side, is very critical. I think, assuming you have the heat, how you take it to the next, to put electricity on the grid, that is a huge area. I think that's going to require a lot of collaboration and research. And I think more attention needs to be paid to that, as you rightly said. On fusion, you're right, some say it's 50 years away, some say 30, some say 10. And if some private equity guy has put his money into it, he'll say 5. But the fact remains is I think the technology still needs to evolve. There are technology components, whether it's the blanket facility for such a device or other aspects. Those component technologies will take time and to get it to a maturity level where you can put a potential fusion power plant together and first demo it. And then, so there are 3 parts. There's the physics of it. Prove that fission actually works on a sustained basis. Second part is, okay, now that you've proved it actually worked on a sustained basis, and you get it at cost point on your grid that is affordable. It's not, there are a lot of technological models in the world that just never got implemented because the economics don't work on that. And then
the infrastructure and supply chain that goes around that whole fusion concept, that needs to be fixed. And there are adversarial countries that I think are leapfrogging in that respect. And so I think US and India have a great opportunity to invest now, because whether it takes 10 years or 15 years, someone is going to crack the code. And I think India is the best position to do that. Thank you. Questions from the floor?
Howard.
Thanks. It,
you have put a lot of emphasis on fusion and fission solutions for the energy. How do you compare that with solar, particularly in terms of economy and environment?
Yeah, I think, of course, there's been a lot of emphasis recently on wind and solar, and a lot of progress has been made, getting the cost points down to the right levels. However, if you look at the energy strategy of any country, I don't believe that renewable energies itself can get you where you need to go in terms of the demand that is present. Nuclear energy is clean, limitless energy in the case of fusion, and since the Fukushima accident, a lot has been done to mitigate the perception of nuclear being dangerous. And so I think without that nuclear component, whether it's US or India or any other country for that matter, it will be very difficult for that increasing gap between the demand and the supply. And you see some countries, very developed countries, going into blackouts now because the demand is so high and all this renewable and everything that they've got going on just cannot keep up. So I think it's becoming a national emergency in many countries to kind of get their nuclear piece in place.
Thank you for a great talk. And my question is more on a policy matter. So how easy for a US startup to manufacture in India right now? Are there any incentives you offer in India only?
That's a great question. You know, having been observing the Indian industry for now 30 years, there's been a sea change in capability. There's been a sea change in the ease of doing business. And I think the genuine cost savings of US companies manufacturing in India, but manufacturing at world-class levels that go into the global supply chain, are tremendous. And you see more and more companies investing heavily in India because of this fact. And, you know, there's always this question, there's Atmanirbhar Bharat, and then there is Make America Great Again, and how do these align? But the fact remains is I do think they're complementary, and they do align because they're collectively, you're tackling growth and growth in innovation, growth in manufacturing. And so if you combine forces and each gets a piece of whatever is their strength, I think more countries grow.
Hi, Dr. Lall. My name is Mark Vlodowski. I'm a computer science student here. And thank you for your talk today. It's very interesting. Regarding your comments concerning adversaries and competitors and growth, several countries together, I was wondering if you could comment on how you see relations between US, India, and China regarding economics, defense, and technological issues.
Right, this is when the battery dies on my That's a great question. I mean, the other side of national security is economic security, and at the end of the day, I think, we live in a global trading
system, you look at the trade numbers between any of those two countries on the three that you mentioned, and there's significant trade going on, right? And I think, however, the relationship has issues from a national security standpoint. So some of these things, of course, are way beyond me to address, but I do think of the three countries you mentioned, US and India being largest and oldest among us, we have the best, not only chance bilaterally, but more globally to help in creating an ecosystem that benefits all. And regarding the China issue, I mean, depending, you're talking to a defense guy, so I have my biases, but there may be other people who can comment on the trade aspects.
And your voice.
Yeah. Thank you for the lecture, Dr. Lall. It's a great look back at how far the US-India relationship has progressed. My name is Trishari. I'm currently with the Atlantic Council, but we have interacted in the past when I was at the Observer Research Foundation. You mentioned India getting SDA1 status. Perhaps related to the economic security question, what's your view on the Biden AI diffusion rules that they dropped on the way out, which limited India's access to GPUs? Does it indicate there's still a trust gap there between the US and India? Do you see this administration continuing those restrictions?
That's a great question. I would view that aspect as an aberration in the relationship. I do not think that goes and that positive vectors. But if you look at the overall picture, I think there's celebrate Americans. And I think, what drives the relationship, as many of you who came here in the 70s and 80s probably know, it was the people ties, right? The people-to-people ties that would form the basis of the US-India relationship. At that time, there was none of this stuff going on. And over time, it was businesses and business ties that again formed the threads between the countries. And now the governments are recognizing what great potential there is. And so sometimes you can make progress in spite of governments. Sometimes, and there was that era. But now there will be a lot of progress due to governments because they have put in so much infrastructure and framework around the relationship that it's the onus is back on the businesses to capture the moment.
Dr. Lall, thank you so much. I was not careful, so I learned a few things today.
Thanks.
I came into the 60s, so I can relate to your last comment.
Right.
Like you, I'm an optimist. I'm in healthcare and tremendous progress in healthcare, pharmaceuticals, etc. the past few decades. Yet, I'm always left thinking, what are some of the potential pitfalls a person of your caliber would notice, short of a World War III or some global collapse? What are some of the things we should be thinking about and be prepared, because things do happen and everything goes in cycles. But your optimism is very much appreciated. I would also like to know what is it that keeps you up at night. Thanks.
Thank you. I think supply chain management is something that I feel is very critical. And we just mentioned this COVID experience, for example, where you have US companies manufacturing stuff in other countries, including India, which may have different ways of handling COVID, as an example, right? Of what needs to shut down, how much needs to shut down. However, without that part built in India, on a certain schedule, you're affecting global supply chains because that part goes into a platform that has to be sold to yet another country. And if the countries are not aligned on how this is all going to happen, especially in national security frameworks, that can cause a problem. And no one can predict these catastrophic events that they happen. So what were the lessons from that? The lessons are you have to have robust supply chains. And the other thing I will point to is raw materials. I think we have big, those that need to know obviously know that the raw materials that are required for manufacturing and doing all these other things that we talk about, a lot of that is residing in adversarial countries. And so how do you build that up? So how do you get critical mineral mining and processing going in other parts in like-minded countries and so forth? So I would say supply chains and raw materials are something to go out.
Good question.
Yeah, my name is Nesh. I'm a history major, minor in data science. My question for you is how you think an increasing transition towards STEM and different energy sources in India will affect the rural populations relying on agricultural economies.
That's right. Yeah, and please feel free to direct some questions to Dr. Probably has a better answer. I mean, the small modular reactors, for example, the idea is that you can put it in these vast spaces at an economic point that is viable. And so countries like India or Australia or other countries could lap this up from an energy need perspective. So I would say that's one of the solutions to, as you rightly said, is, India is an agricultural economy. And unless you have some of these technological benefits go down to the very end, it's not a helpful build.
My question is, how do you see India when it comes to their role that they could play with the current conflicts that we have with Russia, and some would say the US as being a proxy war? Could India have a peace role to play? Some people would say that India is actually benefiting because of the energy issues, but what role do you see them playing? If you had to get your crystal ball out, what do you see happening as far as it goes with India?
Right. I'm really out of my league on some of these questions, but I do think Indian government has to be really complimented on the way that they've had the dialogue going in the multilateral and the bilateral setting with all countries. And I think that is one of the unique strengths of India and something that the US and other countries can leverage as the geopolitics right now.
Hi, Dr. Lall. Thank you for giving us opportunity and much we have already spoken earlier, and I would like to raise a little bit offbeat question, which is you are on the apex of the advanced technology and advanced engineering put together. And now you must be seeing a lot of opportunities which could be opportunities in future. So what will be your message for the younger generation that they should get prepared? These are the new opportunities which are going to surface in near future.
That's a great question, and I think for the next generation, especially the second generation Indians and third generation Indians, I think re-engagement with India for some of them, but engagement with India is going to be very beneficial. Those that can spend some time over there, that can have an internship over there, because India is very different than it was for those of us that came decades ago to this country. The opportunities are immense. The ability to work in Indian industry or think tanks, etc. It's a great opportunity. to get a flavor of the issues from the Indian side. Because right now, even in corporates, if you want to have a career that goes up the chain, if you have no international experience or have not lived abroad on an international cycle, you are limited in the ability to understand global business. And so I would say the opportunities lie in joint R&D, joint work with India, and I think the next generation should leverage that, because that will help them, even if they don't want to have a career in India, I think it's going to leverage them in a better spot in the US to advance in their careers. I, for example, was based in India for 11 years. I thought I was going for 3 years, but I ended up being there for 11 years. Because I wanted to. It was so exciting, the amount of work that was going on was great. The kind of networks you make are wonderful, that help you in a lifetime.
Do you think that was one of the reasons which made you so successful in what you do?
That's kind of you to say. It at least makes me aware of issues and think of issues from different perspectives. And I lived in many countries around the world growing up, but in Africa and Europe, etc. And so it did help train the mind to think differently from different perspectives, different cultures. And then I think it enables you to make better decisions. And to Dr. Joshi's point that technology and policy intersect. So what policy are we talking about, and what policies are we framing unless we know other countries' perspectives, especially when the markets are so huge.
Hi, sir. So my name is Kaushik. I just have a quick question. So you mentioned that fusion would be amazing for electricity generation, but let's say we're able to achieve economies of scale for fusion. What do you think are the next top 3 applications for this energy? Do you think we could use it for powering propulsion systems in space, or even weapons for national security?
Absolutely, great question, and we're already doing that. So there are a lot of fusion-based phenomena. Our electromagnetic launch and recovery system on the aircraft carriers actually started with some of the fusion work that we were doing. So there have been already a lot of spin-off technologies that go into the defense side of things. And so, fusion, when it happens, then on the electricity grid, as Dr. Kappa will spend maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. But in the meantime, there are a lot of spin-off benefits of fusion.
Thank you, Dr. Lall, for the talk. I'm Shubham, I'm a Ph.D. student in aerospace here. I'm happy somebody brought up the question of what the young generation should look for in terms of opportunities. Because it seems we're going through a big unraveling where what we were able to capitalize earlier in terms of globalization has changed. And the knowledge economy itself is unraveling in many ways. What was not okay to share is okay to share, and then the way knowledge itself gets generated is going in a different place. And you mentioned of complementarity here, not in the context of India relationship, but in general, when you're in corporate leadership and you're looking for efficiencies outside, how do you see this situation developing, and where are these efficiencies of future if we best do so?
Right. Efficiency, these days efficiency has different meanings, but efficiency in terms of technological progress would be frugal innovation, I think. So, it is so important that we get not only technology and all the great things that we can achieve from a technology, but at a price point that works globally competitive. And for the cost that India incurred to put, as you remember recently, the craft on the south side of the moon, Hollywood can't even make a movie about that in that much money, right? So it shows frugal innovation is so important, and so you have to be able to do it at the right cost point. And the countries that will pull ahead are the countries with the right demographics. India has the right demographics. And the second piece is, can they do frugal innovation at the right point? So these are two very big advantages that India has from an efficiency standpoint. As US can leverage to work.
Dr. Lall, thank you so much for your time. It's been really great. I'm Dave, security studies guy. I have a question that's maybe not perfect for the spirit of the event, but it's kind of uniquely good for you. You sold to the United States government to like Boeing and Lockheed, and you also seen it from General Atomics, and then you're competing with Anduril and Palantir. Those guys have a lot to say about how their first government buys stuff. What do you have to say about like how should the U.S. government be a better customer so that we get more for our money?
Yeah, that's a great topic, and it goes into many aspects. One of the aspects certainly is, for example, the U.S. FMS process. The foreign military sale process, I think there's a lot that can be done to streamline that process, make more efficiencies. That's one piece. And the export control regime, that's another piece that needs to really be re-architected, in my opinion. Because otherwise you're losing out, we're all losing out on the conversation, especially if you look at Southeast Asia, whether you look at Taiwan or Indonesia or any of these countries, and you want to be part of those conversations. You have to be quite carefully nimble, because guess what, the adversary is quite nimble. And so, if you can cut out some of the bureaucracy that we have to go through from an international sales perspective in the FMS process, that would be one element. Of course, ITAR regulations, as I said, have to be revisited, because 1970s technology should not be federally controlled anymore. And the speed of innovation is so fast that if we even look at the Ukraine situation, how quickly they've had to adapt to new platforms and push it out in the field. So technology is changing every 6 months. But if we can't even review a release for a year, that's enough. So yeah, that's a great question.
Maybe I'll ask a question. So it is under your leadership that the Boeing India really grew from, I guess, 1% to a huge organization. What is your experience in that?
Yeah.
How difficult or easy it was growing so quickly?
Yeah, we were fortunate when I was with Boeing. We were fortunate that we had sold commercial aircraft to India for a long time, which was kind of the base. But when the US-India relationship happened after the civil nuclear deal actually was signed, one of the benefits of civil nuclear deal was on the defense side rather than the nuclear side, because it took the relationship into trust. But getting the best of Boeing to India and the best of India to Boeing was a very instructive process, and that really established the company over in the formative years. And part of the reason is good, right? So you had US people learning India and actually, in many cases, training their replacements with the best in-class methods and methodologies. Because just having a bunch of experts all the time leaves out customers. And so going there, training in the best methodology, and then having Indian leadership take over and implement that. Having an R&D center that does collaborative research based in India. And really companies like Honeywell and others, and also several R&D centers, GE, based in India. So and now, of course, IBM and Microsoft, and they have huge presence. But everyone started very small, and it was all about the people that the questions. Thank you. Now that we have got the new nuclear
it just happened a few days ago. Do you think the same thing can happen here? Like some of the US companies opening up their R&D center? Absolutely. I do think so. I think that tremendous opportunities that really the floodgates have opened out that stuff. So a lot of students, faculty, and industry and university that's doing that. Because
Take that can. Thank you, Dr. Lal. Now, I got to put my academic hat on. And as political scientists, we notice that Thomas saying is very complex subject. References to designing, put that to use in that field. I'm always interested in understanding things from perspectives of constituents. I think it was saying this. Okay. So two things. One is you dealt with Indian defense democracies and trade. Very close. That's right. What has been the evolution, and what, in your opinion, is the Indian military and then Indian defense democracy now perceived in terms of the military factors, just experiences on the sort of like works dealing with system. Second, as we're talking during the faculty, general governments has also a lot of experience dealing with a completely different beast, which is now coming up in India, which is private startups, right? For a long period of time, government controlled R&D, and suddenly you see unleashing of this animal spirit in the private sector. Can you compare the two and tell us more about that?
Sure. On your first question, so I'll take an example, the DPP, which is the Defense Procurement Procedure, which has evolved into the DAP now. India put a fairly robust methodology to update that document over time to keep up with the latest and greatest, if you will, in terms of acquisition policies. The other thing I point to is offset policy. So that too has evolved over time, where some are soft offsets, some are hard offsets, but those offset policies and regulations through the Indian government spread has evolved so that it can focus in on what is required. So certainly the bureaucracy has taken note of what the environment is. I mean, I don't think there's any country where the call of the military is not to, we need things done faster. And that is true in the US. The only thing that can compare to Indian bureaucracy is American bureaucracy, to this question. So I think all bureaucracies are very deliberate, there's process driven, but there is a need for speed, just because of the geopolitics and the needs. So, but there is a framework to do that, it's just what we work to that. The second question is very exciting because we are working with startups in artificial intelligence and semiconductors, Indian startups. And they are tapping into a global pool of vendors. They don't keep it restricted to just India. So whoever is the thought leader in their particular field, they will go to that person, whether that person is in UK or US or perhaps. And they're best in class. And these are, like the students sitting here, they're young students, graduate students, PhD students, that have decided that they're going to do a startup. And they don't necessarily have great resources either. But very quickly they tap into this global network and they are able to figure things out. And then they get mentor companies like we are, who's already struggling. And you can handle and make sure that some of the mistakes that typical startups make are not made. And so I think that is a segment to watch in India with the startup community because they're on fire. They're really doing great work and they're moving ahead. And I think there is a recognition of major companies here that we need to work closely with them.
Thank you, Dr. Lal, for your talk. So I have a question on FDI and how the increase in the limit of FDI or investment in the defense sector has benefited the US-India relations, and what are some of the gaps that still remain?
That's an excellent question. So, to the credit of the government of India, they have increased the FDI limits progressively. And I think that is a very big enabler of businesses. But it's not the only enabler. And so the entire ecosystem has to, whether it's infrastructure, it's talent, etc., it all in combination works. But that is a great enabler. I think on FDI, a lot of people naturally thought in defense, okay, then therefore there should be joint ventures. And I have always been a believer that the content will drive the format. And sometimes, companies just ran together and formed a joint venture, hoping that there will be work coming in. But there was no work coming in, so the joint venture failed. So, but now we live in an age where I do think the content is a living fine. Whether it's a joint venture, whether it's a strategic collaboration, that's left to the businesses to decide. But I do think FDI limits being discriminated. You meant to go.
Dr. Lal, thank you very much for your talk. I've been enjoying the content of it, very illuminating. I have one quick question about the R&D setup that Genatomics and all other different companies are also doing in India. Do you foresee these R&D centers to become a beast of its own, or just serve the American, the counterpart? And will they go beyond, say, you said frugal engineering and things like that? Will they become full-fledged center on their own? And if that is the plan, do you see Indian higher education living up to the standards of what you demand? And if not, do you plan to work with the universities in India to upgrade the curriculum and things like that to make this more sustainable?
Yeah, excellent question. I think the higher education system in India certainly is very good. However, depending on what discipline one is hiring for, whether it's engineers, program managers, product managers, there's a lot of in-house training that companies end up doing. And that's an essential element that I think will continue to happen or is needed. So for some of the joint ventures set out, whether it's in manufacturing, engineering, or R&D, there is very, very robust in-house training programs to get the freshly minted graduate students and others that come out from the universities. Is there a need to continue to improve educational systems? Of course, yes. One of the ways to doing that, I think, is when U.S. universities collaborate with the Indian universities. I know some U.S. universities are trying to set up campuses there, etc. So I think all that, but just in addition to all that, robust in-house training is happening. And I touched upon this lunch when someone was asking what are the skills that are missing. Because India makes a lot of great engineers from the world, right? So many engineers come out of India and go on pursue higher degrees or what have you. But I think project management, in my view, is a big opportunity for students here as well as there, especially as we're talking about the intersection of technology or policy. You have to get people, because you can put, as I gave the example, 10 brilliant engineers in the room, but you have to, and if it's on a project or a platform, you have to be able to manage the project, and that is often not so split out. There was a hand. Yes, the hand up. And issue. Should I? Go ahead. Let. Honestly.
Is there any other question? Okay.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, would you guys ever be interested, like the pre-government, like what would you guys possibly advocate for, and what do you guys want?
The question was working for them.
Yeah, like either like would you guys advocate in a lobby or like cities where that renewable energy you guys participate in legalities like that?
Yeah, I mean, regardless of where you work, there's a lot of policy shaping that goes on from the different groups, industry or government or think tank community. And I think being able to see into the future and advocate some of that is kind of what institutions like this here, letters can get some this. Oh, yeah, I agree.
Okay, one last question. Yeah.
I like the part of the lecture and talk about nuclear fission and space travel.
Yeah.
You said you've cut down times to go to Mars from 6 months to 45 days. Could you expand on that?
Well, there are new technologies in the nuclear fuels business that are coming up. And I can say that some of those innovations will lead to the propulsion system to be more efficient so that the rocket that's designed can reach.
Wonderfully. Also, in continuation, that you said nuclear fission would be required for us to have a camp on link. Why is that?
So if you have astronauts on the moon right in the time, you would need some source of energy. So it's not the only way to do it, but fission power on surface of the moon is one way that's being explored. And so that's great.
So we have to have a land on the moon?
Yeah, you can have a device that can create fish land.
Well, I guess that brings this essentiation challenge, opposition or argument, and we should thank Dr. Lall given us to record in.
Thank you. As we draw this enlightening session to a close, I want to express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Vivek Lall for sharing his profound insights on US-India ecological opportunities and delivering the India Center's inaugural distinguished lecture. His perspectives not only broadened our understanding but also reaffirmed the limitless potential that emerges from innovation and collaboration. He has laid the foundations of what I hope to be one of the most eventful traditions for the India Center in the future. Thank you so much, sir. I'm equally grateful to our esteemed moderator, Professor Jayanta Kapat, for facilitating this conversation. And thank you to our audience, our students, faculty, and the Central Florida community. Your presence has made this event truly special. Your enthusiasm and engagement are the driving force behind our mission at the UCF India Center. Before I invite Lila to formally close today's session, behind this event is a village of many dedicated people who have helped make today possible. First, let me thank the India Center's Director for Public Affairs, Lila Chand. Her devotion, talent, and energy to organize and plan this event are evident in its success. I would also acknowledge the help and support of the communications and the marketing team at the College of Sciences. Thank you, Sultan. Thank you for all you do for us. Our students are a vital role. Arjun, our student assistant, sitting right there in the corner, and Liliana, somewhere in there, yes, right there. Not only help the India Center run, but also bring great vitality and joy to the India Center. Finally, I want to acknowledge the support of many student organizations, including the Indian Students Association, the Indian Graduate Student Association, the International Medical Outreach, the Punjabi Students Association, the Gujarati Students Association, the Knights Khayal, and the Knights Nakshatra. These volunteers not only help us immensely, but their enthusiasm and presence remind us of our purpose, to shape and train the next generation of scholars and leaders. Let us carry forward the inspiration and ideas from tonight, forging new partnerships and innovative solutions that transcend boundaries. We look forward to continuing this journey of discovery and collaboration in the future. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we close the India Center's inaugural Distinguished Lecture, we stand reminded of the profound potential that lies at the crossroads of these two great nations. We are bound by the shared values of innovation, democracy, and resilience, and together, the US and India are uniquely positioned to shape the technological landscape of the 21st century. Let us leave here today inspired to deepen collaboration, foster a culture of mutual inspiration, and leverage our combined strengths to address the world's most pressing challenges. The possibilities are limitless. So thank you all so much for joining us, and have a great evening.